On the 4th of August, 1976, two planes, Tu-95 Bear D, were carrying out a reconnaissance flight. Having taken off from Cuba, they headed to the USSR across the Atlantic Ocean to get to the airbase in the Kola Peninsula in the Murmansk Oblast. But after several hours of flight, the connection with one of the planes broke down. The crash of the reconnaissance aircraft Tu-95 over the Atlantic still sparks off considerable debate. We will try to collect all facts together and recreate the picture of what happened. In 1955, the intercontinental strategic bomber Tu-95 entered service of the Soviet Air Forces. According to the classification of that period, an intercontinental bomber is an aircraft which, having taken off from the territory of the USSR, is able to fly to the USA, drop bombs, and then fly back. The unrefueled rangeability of the new strategic bomber was more than 12,000 kilometers. Like any exceptional airplane, Tu-95 became the basis of numerous modifications. In 1959, apart from bombers and missile carriers, the joint stock company Tupolev received an order for one more special variation, which was later on named Tu-95 Bear D. The plane had to perform the functions of naval reconnaissance and target indicator for missiles aimed from submarines. The aircraft had to detect the target and then transmit its position data to the submarine in the surface position. Then, the submarine launches the missile and performs command flight control. When the missile quit the visibility area of the apparatus in the submarine, Tu-95 performed the function of retransmitter and transmitted the missile's actual position to the command controller. These highly specialized planes were part of the marine aviation of the Northern and Pacific fleets. They were based on the airfield Tupolev, 40 kilometers from Vologda. To carry out reconnaissance flights, the planes took off from Tupolev, then headed to the north, and then turned left over the Barents Sea's neutral waters and flew over the Scandinavian peninsula to get to the North Atlantic. The Soviet pilots called these flights Transatlantic, or, if to translate literally from Russian, flights around the corner. When the Soviet planes flew over the GIUK gap, they were detected by the NATO radar stations, and the games of the Cold War began. The military people have a term to reveal the situation. An aircraft is located in a special area, and with the help of technical equipment, it watches naval ships and submarines and observes their actions. With the use of this kind of reconnaissance, the Fleet Command gets an idea of the powers and resources of the potential enemy and what tasks they solve in this specific area. Although the rangeability of the Tu-95 Bear D allowed it to completely patrol the North Atlantic, the head of the fleet wanted to increase patrol time. It was possible to use air tankers, but it was expensive and problematic. It was much easier for the USSR to use the permission of the Cuban government led by Fidel Castro. In the 70s, the flights from Cuban airfields, combined with naval missile systems carrying nuclear warheads, posed the greatest danger for the territory of the USA. Today, we will talk about one such flight, which led to the catastrophe. The 4th of August, 1976, Jose Marti Airfield in Cuba. Two Tu-95 Bear D were preparing for the takeoff. The task of the couple was quite standard. The planes were flying home to the airfield in Olenogorsk, call sign Vysokij. According to the route of the flight, they had to follow the ships of the United States Second Fleet. Arkady Krasnoselsky was appointed as commander of the leading board. The flight was in normal mode. After 6 hours and 20 minutes, the couple traveled some distance. By that time, the planes had already consumed a part of their fuel. As a result, they became lighter. Now they could gain some more altitude. But after several seconds, for some unknown reason, Tu-95 suddenly entered a spin. The crew falling into the Atlantic managed to transmit that they were experiencing congestions and could not handle control wheels. In state of emergency, they were trying to stop the plane from stalling, but the machine was uncontrollable and congestions did not allow the crew to use any means of escape.
Аркаша! Выводи, выводи, падаем! Пытаюсь. Давайте, помогайте! Не получается! Штаб, падаем в штопоре! Сильнейшей перегрузки штурвал из рук вырывает! Твою мать! Пипец!
The connection with the leading plane broke down. The command post ordered to the wingman to descend 300 meters and inspect the water surface. The pilots did not find the site of the crash. They were ordered to fly back to Cuba. According to the Soviet records, the site of the crash was found 180 miles south of the Bermudas. According to the American records, it was found 230 miles southeast of Newfoundland. The search operation began. It was a race against time. The USA also started looking for Tu-95 Bear D. If they had found the site of the crash first, the USSR would have had serious problems. A group of ships taking part in the search operation was quickly formed. The ship's crews used all available means. Almost 600 square kilometers of water area were examined. And only 6 weeks later, the USSR managed to find some aircraft fragments. Then work began on getting the remains of the bodies and the equipment, the listing of which was written on several pages. The remains of all 12 members of the crew, along with more than 300 devices, details, and fragments of the plane were taken out of the water. Among other things, the flight recorders of the plane were found. They were decoded. The materials of decoding caused confusion. Specialists expected to find information about the plane system failure and were ready to improve the construction of Tu-95. Experts started to propose versions of what had happened. Why and how a completely functioning Soviet reconnaissance aircraft could enter a spin and fall into the Atlantic. Before the catastrophe of the Tu-95 bombers, Tu-16 entered a spin in a similar way several times. All those falls also took place at an altitude of 9 to 10 kilometers, and they were preceded either by extreme turbulence or by carrying out some maneuver. But in all those cases, the reason for the failure was the equipment. As a result of the investigation, two main versions were proposed. According to the first official version, Tu-95 entered a spin as a result of getting into wingtip vortices of a foreign civil plane or a military aircraft. Specifically, at that moment, it was crossing an international air tract. However, the weak link to this version is the fact that the crews of the Tu-95 could not ignore an intensive air traffic between the Old World and the New World, and they had to choose flight altitude between the flight levels of international tracks. The flights of military planes of long range and Navy aviation were always carried out according to the rules of the airspace use over neutral waters, without crossing other countries' borders. On top of that, civil aircrafts do not thrash about. They fly strictly according to their flight levels and routes. It is doubtful that the crew with perfect cooperation made a mistake. The second version that also has grounds for assumptions is that there was a chance of a dangerous incident or a close approach with an American interceptor. The version was based on the experience and reality of the Cold War. History knows many examples when planes crashed with this kind of aerial escort. For instance, in the 70s, Tu-95 was intercepted by 3 American F-4 Phantom II interceptors over the Atlantic. One of them smashed the wing of the Soviet plane by its tail. The Phantom lost control and crashed. Probably something like this could happen on the 4th of August, 1976, but In this case, it was the Soviet plane that crashed. As usual, a couple of F-15 Eagle flew to intercept Tu-95 Bear D. One of the planes started to show advanced aerobatics, and it was not clear why, whether to demonstrate the skills or to prevent the Bear from performing air reconnaissance near the American borders. Because of congestions or technical failure, the Eagle accidentally shot a missile, and it fell into the ocean. The crew of Tu-95 interpreted it as an attack and shot the enemy. The F-15 fell into the water. The pilot died. Having seen this, the pilot of the second F-15 shot the Bear and flew back to the base. Since all the engines of the spinning reconnaissance plane were functioning and the crew were alive, it may be concluded that the shot hit the fin of the plane. The control was lost and the heavy bomber entered a flat spin and crashed. But here comes the discrepancy. For example, if one of the F-15s had been shot down and the other one had returned to the base, with the use of the emergency beacon and the report of the returned F-15, the USA would have found the site of the crash quicker than the crew of the Soviet rescue team. The wingman under the command of Yuri Manin flew at another flight level and did not see anything. Maybe after that, the two sides of the incident held negotiations and decided to keep the matter quiet. The world was told that the Soviet Bear crashed, failing to escape the spin. Even if we find the exact answer, it will not happen soon. The Soviet Union gave place to the Russian Federation. Even after many decades, the official documents of this plane crash are still classified. If you like our aviation stories, please subscribe and hit the like button. We thank our sponsors from Patreon. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next episode.